Okay. Hello, welcome everyone to this episode of Build Beyond, about payouts as a differentiator and the changing boundaries of finance. Firstly, a bit of background on Build Beyond. If this is the first session that you're joining, last year Checkout.com launched a series of webinars aimed at bringing together kind of a targeted or kind of a small group of senior product, e-commerce, payment leaders and experts from businesses and all over, and some of our partners, to discuss topics within payments. And it's really a good chance to hear and kind of ask questions from the experts on their experiences and how the various companies and businesses are building beyond kind of the crisis of last year, kind of here in Europe and globally. Before this episode is going to look at how moving money out of companies and businesses is just as critical as kind of accepting payments, and how in fact it can be a differentiator for a lot of companies out there. And I think it's a very relevant topic, and businesses are kind of seeing the need to innovate and move in this space. Before we dive in with some introductions, a little bit of housekeeping. So the session today will run for about 45 to 50 minutes. Normally we do about 40 minutes where we'll be discussing as a panel. I'll be hosting it today with some questions at the end. However, I invite you all to please just feel free to ask the questions throughout. Even now as we do introductions, if you're super keen and you want to ask some questions, just put them in the box, and we'll be able to see them throughout. I'm happy to kind of move the agenda to where you guys want to discuss. Just be ruthless and ask whatever questions you want, and we will try our best to answer them. So please get typing in with the questions as we go forward. A little bit about myself. My name is Moshe Winegarten. I lead commercial for UK and Ireland here at Checkout.com, and spent many years in payments, and actually for the last 3 years working with at Visa on the Visa Direct product, which we're going to talk about today on Push to Card. So it's a really super exciting topic for me. Checkout.com, for those of you who don't know, are a global end-to-end payment service provider. We work with some of the biggest e-commerce clients in the industry, from clients like that, Grab, Revolut, Deliveroo, etc., TransferWise, on helping them optimize their payments and accept payments globally, with a local presence in over 18 countries. Let me turn to my fellow panelists. Justin, do you want to give a little introduction about yourself and Visa Direct?
Absolutely. Thanks, Moish. So my name is Justin Zhao. I'm sitting here in San Francisco. I wear 2 hats for the Visa Direct team. The first is global strategy and planning lead, and I also manage our global accounts and partnerships. So I get to work with awesome partners like Moish, like Nick, and talk to them about how real-time card payments and payouts can really help solve their core business objectives, in addition to thinking about how we scale the Visa Direct business globally.
Awesome. Always a pleasure. And Nick, do you want to give a little introduction to yourself and CloudPay?
Yeah, my name is Nick Newman. I'm the director for strategic initiatives for CloudPay. CloudPay is a global payroll provider. I've been in the payments industry for 40 years, working in banking in terms of the payments, card processing, and integrated systems. My goal has always been to use technology to help customers get a better experience when they're making payments. Thank you.
Awesome. No, thanks, Nick. That's awesome. And I'm going to kind of excited to hear how you found this technology is going to help your clients. So let's dive in. Justin, do you want to give a little background for people who might not be familiar with what Visa Direct is, how it works, and what challenges it's coming to solve, and Visa solving in the market today in the payout space, which is it's new for Visa, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Moish. So the way I like to explain Visa Direct is we really have flipped the Visa network on its head. It's a reversal of the traditional flow of funds as we think about it, and have thought about it for decades here at Visa. When people usually think of the Visa network, they think of using a credit or a debit card to purchase goods and services from a business. Visa Direct is really kind of flipping that model on its head, and it allows businesses and individuals to send funds in real time to the debit card And what that means is, I think the best way to understand is really through some live use cases. So in insurance, for example, I think a very easy way for people to understand, in insurance, the way it traditionally works today, you will file, let's say you get in a car accident, you file a claim, they process the claim, and you need to get paid out your funds from the insurance company. Today, they may, if you're in the US, they may send you a check. Other places in the world, they may ask you for your routing and IBAN number, and they'll send you the funds via bank transfer. With Visa Direct, instead, especially in a digital and app experience, you can instead just take a picture of the back of your debit card, capture the 16-digit PAN, and the funds are in your account in real time. So that's, there are plenty of other use cases that we can talk about, peer-to-peer money movement. So your Venmos, PayPals, Apple Pays, Facebook, WhatsApps of the world, using Visa Direct rails to facilitate real-time transfers between individuals. And plenty of other B2C use cases as well. And we talk about, the value prop and how we think this really helps merchants in solving pain points. I mean, there are certainly pain points that Visa Direct can solve. I mean, when we think about especially multi-market merchants, the ability to have one single connection point over a secure and trusted network like Visa to reach the world, I think is really invaluable, as opposed to maintaining a network of banking relationships in each market that you're either in or want to expand to. That single connection to achieve scale can be really powerful. It is a differentiator to the business. But really, I think when we think about the Visa Direct value proposition, at its core, it really is, like Nick mentioned, all about the user experience on the platform and being a competitive differentiator in the market. So when we're talking about, let's say, a driver or a delivery company or a home sharing platform, the core business objective of a lot of these platforms is to attract and retain users. Right. Whether you're a home share, someone that has a house that you want to list on a platform, or whether you are a driver or a delivery person that is looking to, where to list your services and which platform to choose from. We think that payouts, especially real-time payouts, with the way that the market has changed, is really a way that you can differentiate yourself as a platform by offering real-time, on-demand, seamless user experience in a form factor that the card form factor that everyone has, in their back pocket, regardless of what country you're sitting in. So that's really, I think, where the competitive differentiator sits for Visa Direct.
Awesome. No, thanks for that, Justin. And again, for people that are still joining, please do jump in, ask questions. If someone wants to understand the mechanics of how Visa Direct's working behind the scene, you can ask that, and any other types of questions. But I think that's, Justin, the point you touched on there on kind of customer demand and expectation, and almost kind of forcing the competition and moving it is really interesting. So I think, Nick, do you want to tell us a little bit about what CloudPay kind of traditionally the business, but what you're moving into now, and why you, as you said, leading with technology? What's driven you to kind of Visa Direct and Payouts?
Yeah, for me, it's exciting because we use traditional banking rails, and when we set up a customer, if you imagine, as you said, globally, you need all these different relationships around the globe. So if we've got a customer and we need to send payments to different countries, we need to set up those different things. And practical things that people don't think about is that when we onboard a customer, if I would need to send a payment to an employee, I need to validate that bank account. The only way I can do that is to actually send what we call a penny test. Mm-hmm. And then I need to wait for that employee to come back and say, yes, I received it. That adds time to actually deploying payroll solution. And also, as we know, with the banking environment, I have no control over the route that payment's taking. And anywhere in that route, with today's world, there's much more compliance going on and checking, and that can actually delay that payment getting to its destination. And our goal is to pay people on time their pay, and that's what everybody wants. And as the calendars are being squeezed, it's becoming more difficult. What Pay to Card has allowed us to do is remove a number of those obstacles. We don't need to validate we don't need that validation time, because as we know, within the card scheme, if I go and rent a car or I book a hotel room, I go in with my card and it's validated instantly. So that's removed that need. And the other type thing is the time of the payment. So we've been driving to do faster payments, but it's still a day to get the payment there. Our experience today is that payments arrive instantly. And so what that allows us to do is not only improve the consumer experience, the employee, but we're constantly being squeezed by our customers to reduce the payroll calendar. They want to cut off the payroll as the last possible moment to get new employees on, to put bonuses on, commissions on the payroll. So it's allowed us to extend the calendar because we've gained those days when we need to execute the payment. So these are significant changes that have improved the experience, not just for our customers, but their employees. So that's really what's driving us to do this.
That's awesome. And I want to summarize to make sure I got it all. So the onboarding journey is significantly improved because you've got the penny test, everything's moving quicker. You've got the speed of delivery and kind of the reach. And then there's the benefit for the employers that you're kind of extending the calendar, as you mentioned. Did we touch on kind of the FX and being able to pay out on all these currencies? I don't know, is that something that was considered?
Yeah, well, of course, now we can pay any employee anywhere to their account directly. Whereas before we'd have to go through loops, look at the funding, because the calendar, it's not just improving the calendar of the whole process, but it's actually improving the time when the customer needs to fund for the payroll.
Right.
So you're actually improving not just the calendar of the payroll, but it's a cash flow improvement for the employer. So, you know, we've been under pressure, and we've seen this particularly through the pandemic, where employers are trying to squeeze as much as they can the calendar to improve funding, but without impacting the payment to the employees. What we've seen, and within our own environment, we've looked at actually bringing pay date forward, because now we can improve on the calendar, and it's sharing that improvement with our employees.
That's awesome, especially in kind of COVID and that where
Exactly.
Payroll and salaries is critical. But I'm excited to see, actually, we've got a few questions. I think you've answered this one. The first one here from Nadeem on does Visa Direct work cross-border to pay a software developer for offering services from India, to a buyer in USA? So yeah, I think Nick, that's what you were saying, being able to pay, whether it's a gig, whether it's a contractor, whether it's a full-time employee anywhere in the world. That's kind of the attraction.
Yeah, just think about using your credit card or debit card where you can use that. That is the network.
Awesome. Okay, there's another question. We've got a few more, so bear with me. But I much prefer kind of like we got an audience, and I'm really kind of excited to talk about stuff which are interesting people. But this is one we should have probably covered. So how does Visa Direct and Checkout.com sit together in the transaction flow? That was the first part, and that's an important one, right? So I'll take this one if that's okay. So Visa is a network and rails that connects all the banks and all the issuers and acquirers together. In order for a business to plug into this network and rail, you've kind of got to go to a bank who's sitting on that network, and that's what Checkout.com is. Checkout.com is an acquirer, so like an acquirer bank, we sit on Visa's network, and businesses come to us, and they integrate with us via our APIs, and they send the transaction messages to us. We provide frames and various tools to help them capture the details in a secure way, and then we submit those transaction messages onto the Visa network, and Visa pass them on to the recipient banks. So that's kind of how it sits in the flow. So Visa is not open up to businesses to be able to plug into directly on that, and that's where Checkout.com sits. So kind of the same with accepting payments, right? If you're a business, you accept card payments today, you need to work with a payment service provider or an acquirer like Checkout.com, and then we obviously acquire funds via the Visa network from your customers' cards. So it's the same thing in reverse. The way to think about it is like a refund transaction, except what Visa has done if they work to make that instant and real time, whereas today refund transactions can take like next working day, and here it's kind of instant, which is a great experience. And there was a follow-up question: does Visa Direct price competitively for merchants compared to other payment transferring methods? This is a great question to put on the call, and I love questions that make you uncomfortable. So, immediate answer, Justin. Do you want to? Okay, Dick, go on. You're using it.
I can give a real-time answer to that. So we obviously use multiple payment providers globally, and I have to say that pay to card is half the cost of our best priced other alternative solution.
Awesome. That's a great response.
We've seen a significant saving in processing through pay to card.
Awesome, Nick.
Moshe and Nick, I mean, that's a great answer. And I would love to say, that is, I mean, what I would say to that is, absolutely, it certainly can be a lower cost. I mean, it depends on if we're talking about cross-border and what market. We price competitively at the rails. But yeah, I mean, we generally try and stay very competitive. And I think, especially when you're looking at something like cross-border, which I think is what, that follow-up question was attached to, there's not really, I would say, an equivalent option to Visa Direct where you can move money in real time to any market in the world. That is transparent, right? I mean, Nick, I'm assuming when you're talking about the other rails, we're talking about things like Swift or international wires, or and those are, I would say, slow, not as transparent. You get the liquidity issues that you're talking about. So we do think we're not only competitively priced, but also that our value proposition it's not really apples to apples when you put us up against the other rails, especially when we're talking about a single connection through a partner, like Checkout, that you can reach the world over our network with.
I love that answer. Firstly, I figured you were going to say, "Oh, damn, we should be charging more." So, but no, it's I want to touch onto the value prop and dig into a little bit more details, because you're right, it's not apples to apples, right? Even ignoring Swift, which is not real time, if you look at faster payments in the UK, right? And this was a question we used to get asked a lot. What is the value prop up against that? And I think you talked about liquidity and the netting. We should touch on that. Let's dive into that in a bit, but I just want to run through the questions again, guys. Any more questions on as we discuss this, just jump in and ping them. So we got a question here from Melissa. What are the limitations of Visa Direct? And does checkout.com support the full Visa Direct offering? If not, is there a roadmap that can be shared? Wow. Okay, that's I think that it's a really good question. So I'm going to go to Justin first on the limitations of Visa Direct, if there are any, and then I'll cover off what we offer from Checkout.
Sure. So, I mean, that's a tough and loaded question. Thanks, Melissa, though. It's a good question that we should touch on. So, Visa Direct is, I would say, at a different stage of maturity, depending on, what region and what market we're talking about. To be totally frank, I mean, it's a significantly more mature product or offering, I would say, in certain markets and still developing in others. So if we talk about some of, where Visa Direct has been prevalent for the past half decade, places like the US, Canada, Russia, and some of the Central Asian countries as well, I would say the product is very mature, plug and play, really no issues. I wouldn't say many weaknesses or areas for improvement or development there. However, there are markets where Visa Direct is growing and where we are relatively new. So places like Africa, certain markets in Southeast Asia, and North Asia as well. And even some European markets, although, Europe is rapidly maturing. And all that would really mean in terms of what that tactically means is, there's this concept called fast funds, which is what, we've been talking about. And that is, if you send a transaction, our SLA for that money to be posted into the account of the recipient is, technically it's 30 minutes, but everything's automated on the back end. In testing, I mean, it's really a matter of seconds that those funds are available to
that's even cross-border, right? It's posted
including cross-border.
Yeah.
So if you're sending from Ireland to Singapore, let's say, those funds are available in that Singaporean cardholder's account in usually seconds, a max of 30 minutes. But in some of these markets where we are still growing and developing the product, fast funds are not necessarily fully enabled for all of the issuing banks in the market. So by market, there's generally a percentage that we would say of fast funds readiness. And that would mean that the funds, instead of being posted sort of in seconds, it might be posted sort of day +1 generally is the max. But those, we're getting issuing banks on board every single day, literally. So those numbers are changing on a daily, a weekly, and a monthly basis as we expand our network.
To that point, Justin, I remember, was it like a year and a half ago? We started beginning of 2019. I can't remember if that were like 10% of Visa debit cards in Europe were enabled for real time. And we're now at like over 90%, aren't we, of all Visa debit cards in Europe are now set up for fast funds real time posting. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm not going to quote the exact numbers right now, but absolutely. I think Moshe, when you were on the team right before you left, I do think we were somewhere like below 20, and that has definitely gone 70+, 80+% just in that past year. So the ecosystem is evolving very quickly as we are seeing increasing customer demand, really driving the issuing banks as they see this opportunity to get ready.
Yeah, so to be candid on the limitation, as Justin said, Visa Direct works to all Visa cards. It's about the posting speed, which is kind of the journey that all the issuing banks have been on, and it kind of in the markets like the CIS and the US, it's fully there. Europe's now, I think, almost there. It's really good. And this kind of the developing world, developing markets, a little harder. There are challenges with certain banks as they get comfortable receiving funds via card rails. So some of the banks cross border have limitations as they bring in real-time sanction screening. So these are stuff that we work together with Justin and the team at Visa on very closely. The benefit that Checkout bring as being a multi-regional acquirer, so with licenses kind of all over the world, is that we can support them for the right merchants, domestic payouts where cross-border doesn't work for them. We're there in those markets to be able to do kind of domestic and kind of work with Visa to kind of with solutions that work best for those merchants. And so when you ask to minister to the other part of your question, what does Checkout support with Visa Direct? We support the full Visa Direct offering. I think I'm going to say this, and Justin probably can't confirm, we probably support the broadest type of use cases for Visa Direct kind of today. So all the different types, and I think we're going to touch on those, what types of use cases those are. And I think we're there sending cross-border internationally, domestically. And I think we've adopted, Justin, some of your eligibility checker tools so that you can actually check up in advance if the recipient card is enabled, if it's going to be fast funds or not, if it's going to receive it or not. So that businesses can then present to their customers, hey, heads up, this is good, this card's registered, your funds will be there within half an hour, or hey, it's going to be there next working day, or speed of a refund. So we're adopted and kind of plugged in for the eligibility checkers and kind of the full gamut of Visa Direct. But thank you for that question. That's awesome. Actually, we have another question here from another couple of questions. Bear with me. I'm just kind of catching with the flow. Where is the best place to stay up to date on the countries Visa is moving into? And same question for receiving updates on the checkout.com offering. I guess speak to your local acquiring partner like Checkout. I don't know, Justin, what would you advise?
I would advise exactly the same. Talk to your local acquirer, whoever you partner with today, or call Moshe.
Yeah, call me. It's to be clear, the Checkout offering is there. We're plugged in, we're ready to go, and we work with Visa as they work with the local recipient banks, and with ironing out kind of the rollout country by country. And so our offering's there. There's not much update on our end. It's good to go. And so again, if you were working with us, we work very closely with the teams at Visa globally to get the latest stats and understanding just acceptance, auth rates, and all this kind of fun thing. But that's kind of how we work together. Another question from Zach. As adoption grows, is Visa seeing budding / untraditional / unexpected use cases for pay to card that might not be the use cases that jump to the front of people's mind when they usually think about payouts? So yeah, what are the use cases, guys?
I'll go really quickly. I'd love to hear Nick's perspective as well as to how that's impacting.
How about because Justin, you've got like a view globally.
You're right.
I want to, Nick, you've spoken about kind of payroll, kind of the traditional view, but I think you guys are actually looking at using Visa Direct to move into some new use cases and stuff.
Yeah.
What have you been looking at there?
biggest shift for us is we obviously had to earn wages advance product, and we were using the traditional, because we're doing the payroll, we can have the bank account on that app. That was fine, but it still added time when somebody needed to get those funds. So if I'm sitting on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock and I needed 20 euros, I'd go on and then I'm into a separate transaction. I've missed the cutoff. I'm going to see it on Monday. By adding
just to jump in, Nick. So this is kind of the whole earned wage access kind of budding industry. I just for people who may or may not be aware. So it's been around in the US for a while, but I think it's really taken off here as well in Europe. Instead of payday lending, if you're short of your salary in the middle of the month, what CloudPay have launched is the ability to draw down on what you've earned by working 10 days or a week in the month, right? And get it immediately. So that's, Nick, what you're saying is lets you get that experience to be able to draw down immediately.
Exactly.
Right?
So the employee, we're using the iframe from checkout to capture the card details. It's obviously instantly validated. The employee can pull down that advance and it's instantly into their chosen account. And I think that one of the challenges we had, and some people may not think about this, we're processing the transactions for the payroll for the employer. So our relationship is really with them, as is our payment providers. So we can't allow them to modify the bank account or put their mum's account on or the friend's account on. Whereas by doing it the way we're doing it and going through checkout, that relationship is with the cardholder and their issuer. So they actually can add or take off almost any payment method they want through the app. So what that's done is accelerated the profile of our Earn Wages app. But it's also allowed us to expand who we provide that to. So what we're now looking at is not just having the app, but having a prepaid card or a virtual card and a wallet, and then opening up the payroll opportunity to other people. So one of the things that this has done, and we didn't quite foresee this, is that we obviously do payroll on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, 13-month, and everything else. If you can give an employee instant access to their wages, why would you need to run the payroll weekly?
Interesting.
So it's really changed our view and our customers' view. And we've got some customers which are mutual customers of checkouts. And some of those we do the payroll for the office workers, but not the delivery people, because they're casual workers. By having the Earn Wages app and allowing people to use their own method for deciding where those funds go, it opens up a much wider market for us as a payroll provider as well.
Sure. And then I guessing things like employee expenses and things like that.
Employee expenses, yes. Contractors. We've got customers who've got multiple contractors around different countries. We were using prepaid cards for that. We can now use our app and they can put it to their own account. They don't have to have another card in their wallet. So
and were you telling me as well about you guys are now looking at using it for letting employees to share money back home with their relatives as well?
Right. So one of the big things that we've seen is that if somebody is, and actually one of our employees raised this, so they're originally from India, they send money home to India, and it's, they pay quite a bit to do that. Even in the UK, they have to go somewhere to do it. Whereas they said, well, can I do it on the app? And of course they can. They can put the mother's card details in or send it to the mother's card details instantly from the app. What it does, it's cheaper for them to do it that way. It's instant and they don't have to leave their seat to do it. Awesome. I just want to cover some of the things on the obstacles or the challenges. So
yeah, please.
We're there's always challenges with any solution. There's always something. And I
No,
think
it's perfect. It's perfect, Nick. Don't say that. Okay, go on.
I think if you're mindful of it, and it's logical if you think about it, but with this solution, because it's instant, it also works the other way instantly. So if I've lost my card or I've put my card in the washing machine, I'm going to order a new one. As soon as I make that request, that card's frozen out. So I'm going to have to re-input my card again. That's why we use the iframe, and it's really simple to load a new or additional card. But it's just to be mindful that having an instant, you want instant solutions, but it's instant both ways. So
Yeah, no, I guess like with the old with the kind of the Swift or the other methods, sometimes if there's a bounce back and there's a problem with the shipping account, or even if it's the wrong account number, like let's don't even go to like closed accounts. If there's a typo, sometimes the bounce back comes a week later and the funds are there and the employee's kind of going, and what you're saying is here, if there's any problem, there's an instant decline, immediately it's got to be fixed and
yeah,
reach out.
The example you've given is a positive for us, because at the moment, if we've got 500 employees and we've sent it out and one of them has moved their account, closed their account, that money could sit in a holding account for a week.
Exactly.
Or 10 days. The employee hasn't been paid. This solution, we know instantly whether that money's going through or not. That is invaluable to have that information.
I'm sure for the employee and the employer.
Correct.
Yeah.
And for us, to be frank, because on our side, when that happens, we have to resolve that problem. And it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, depending on if that money's gone to Nigeria. Remember, we're sending money all over the world. If that money's gone to Nigeria, it might honestly take several weeks to come back.
Do you have to front it then, or does the employer have to front it in the meantime?
Well, it depends where the issues come from. But at the end of the day, our goal is to make that payment to the employee on time. So invariably, we are helping get those funds back out to the right account for that.
Right, so it saves you kind of the fronting issue, but even then, just the operational cost of just dealing with it.
And dealing with the operational headache. And the fact is that nobody wins in that scenario.
No.
If someone's paid late, nobody wins.
No, absolutely. I want to touch on, by the way, on the lost card scenario. So yes, it's a slick UX to kind of recapture new details, but actually we should probably have touched on this, Nick. We have, in fact, we've got Visa account updater, which is basically if the card expires, we're automatically reaching out to Visa, collecting the new details. So actually, we're even reducing those scenarios, so they shouldn't happen, and also being a token requester. So if they are lost, stolen, or destroyed, or damaged, and there's a new card issued, getting those details updated against the token in real time. So the only real scenario is more if they've typed in the details wrong or something like that, and the error's the first time. So, but again, completely. I think that's really valuable insight from an actual use case or adopting the program. So we talked about payroll, we talked about earned wage access kind of in real time, expense reimbursement, a bit of remittance. Justin, what else are you hearing out there kind of in the world? And I think there was asked for weird and wonderful, but what are you hearing? What are the use cases?
I think the first thing to point out is just how great and unique that Nick experience with CloudPay was, where they had a specific use case in mind. They plugged in to a partner checkout in this case, and then they realized that there are a whole host of other B2C flows that they could consider, and it just expands from there. And we see that time and time again, with partner after partner, where we have a core use case in mind, and then they realize there are a lot of either existing B2C flows or even P2P flows that they can facilitate, or that they can expand their offering by offering new payment flows to their customers, like the remittance case that Nick just mentioned, which is actually a story that we've heard before, specifically with remittances. So I mean, I would say that there's sort of the traditional set of use cases that folks may not be as aware of, because we sit on the back end. Often merchants will brand our solution as their own faster pay or instant pay solution, which is great. But we are perfectly okay and happy with that. But maybe it may be the reason why a lot of folks that are on the call may not realize that the technology that Visa and a partner like Checkout are providing on the back end is really supporting some of these core use cases that they use every day. So use cases like P2P payments. We have partnerships with Venmo, PayPal, WhatsApp, Facebook Pay, Apple Pay. A lot of those rails are actually running on card rails. And some other traditional use cases like driver delivery, sort of the pre-EWA, before the core EWA, where Lyft and Uber as early adopters in the US were offering their traditional 2-week payout to their drivers or their delivery folks. And then they added that on-demand button where you could instantly pull out those funds that you had already earned, and you have to wait for that 2 week. And Moshe, you know this story, but after Lyft and Uber as the early movers in the US had adopted this function, one of the large fast food chains in the US came to us and they started asking us about Visa Direct. And we were a little confused. We were like, what's driving you guys coming to us and asking for this? And what they told us is that they had employees that were taking sick days to go drive for Uber and Lyft if they had a bill, because Uber and Lyft allowed them to get those funds in real time, so they didn't have to take out a short-term loan or anything else to cover those bills. And unfortunately, I think that situation has only been exacerbated by COVID and some of the other uncertainty in the world. And I think Nick, platforms like CloudPay are really providing a service that customers are demanding and increasingly demanding. And the other kind of core use cases like marketplaces, right? If you're a seller on a platform and you're selling your new pair of Air Jordans, being able to pull those funds out, not only in real time, but I think the on-demand function is so powerful when you want those funds. Home sharing, I was
going to say on the marketplaces, and even like to some extent, what we found is from a marketplace owner perspective, it's converting buyers into sellers. Because you've got the card on file. We talked about the benefits of Visa Direct and the value prop, and one of those is UX, right? So card on file is a massive. I'm sorry to jump in, but even insurance. I paid my insurance premium by card. You've got my card on file. Why are you asking for my bank details? It's just there, right? So again, and it's the conversion when you talk about marketplaces. I shop on X marketplace, and then, hey, I want to sell something, but it's a pay and I've got to sign up, and then they want details. Hey, but if I've got my debit card on there, you're ready to go, just sell and you get a payout back to those things. So I think marketplace and some of those that you're mentioning, we've found some of that resonating. But go on, you were going through some more use cases besides.
Yeah. I mean, that's so interesting too, Moish. And I know, Nick, you mentioned this where, there's the replacement cards. And I know folks in the UK are, I would say, one of the only countries that have, I would say, a different relationship with their PAN on their debit card is with their kind of bank account number. But generally in the rest of the world, people, I would say, are much more hesitant to part with that bank account number. They for better or worse, they find that to be a more risky piece of data to part with in their PAN, which they can, replace easily, and where there's a lot of security features that Visa has already put in place over the decades to ensure that, there's no liability for the user.
There's some people. I mean, again, in the UK, you've got your bank card details on your card. I came across, in that role, people depending on the market don't necessarily know their bank account number. Whereas the card, your card pan, right? You like Nick's nodding, right? You've got it in your pocket. So if someone said sign up, and I've got an app and I'm on the bus or something, hey, I've got it. I can just do it. Where Whereas I think I was talking to an ex-colleague at Visa back at the time, getting paid from, instead of check, this is the US, on payroll. They had to find a blank check to send it in to find the bank account details, the routing numbers, so they could get set up. Whereas something in your pocket, which is there, is kind of cool. So. Yeah, sorry, God, just what other weird and wonderful
especially in
a
digital experience, right, Moish? I mean, where you're on an app, I mean, you can just take a picture of your PAN and it's loaded and you're ready to go. And in the US, you're right. I mean, you got to dig for that account and routing number, and it's long and no one knows it. But to touch on the question I think it was asked, some of the really unexpected use cases, I mean, that we're seeing really growing are wallets, trading, crypto, being able to access those funds in real time, has been, and the proliferation of, neobanks and digital wallets across the world, being able to move money in and out of those wallets, I think is something that we've seen really, really grow. And especially with COVID, I think this was mentioned by one of the questions earlier, online content creators, that is an
That's a really good
increasingly
one.
large industry. And often the platform is not necessarily, global, like some of these other businesses that are, more brick and mortar that move market to market. I mean, these online platforms, they sit in one market, they have their financial relationships in one market, but they have content creators sitting all across the world. The card value proposition there really becomes invaluable to that business.
You haven't even mentioned like the traditional remittance ones. Like there's been in the press about TransferWise, MoneyGram, Western Union, all these ones. We've had experience in that. I was thinking through. I don't think of some of the other, just the last weird and wonderful before we move on to the next question. But I did a session actually with Visa. We do reward loyalty payouts. And which is really cool. So if you're shopping and you've got card on file, and this is a company that actually moved into Westfield malls. So again, think of COVID, they're spending in mall, they're getting immediate credit. So it doesn't matter which shop, but it's kind of at a mall level. They're getting a cash back directly to their cards. So loyalty payouts, I thought was cool as well. You saw my the content one. I was going to mention that, but that's it's a growing area. I just want to jump because I've seen another question come through. So can Visa Direct conceptually apply to credit cards? That's a really good question. Justin?
Conceptually, absolutely. And in fact, we do have some use cases in Southeast Asia right now where, it's a massive use case for us. And folks are using what we call the original credit transaction, which is a Visa Direct push transaction, to do credit card bill pay, because a lot of folks are managing their funds in these digital wallets, and it's hard to do a bank transfer especially if you're a neobank, right? It's just more challenging than plugging into a fast-moving fintech partner like Checkout and being able to push funds directly into a credit card account to be able to pay that off. But I would say that the use cases are still sort of technically no problem, but we evaluate them on a sort of case-by-case basis because there are more challenges.
Well, the main thing to remember, guys, with credit cards is it posts against the credit limit, so it doesn't go to online bank account. So the Visa Direct solution from Visa is meant to bring real time interbank payments to actual core bank accounts, and that was how it's designed. So the mandate, I think, from you guys on being real time was all on debit cards. So the money's in the account, instantly available for cash withdrawals for like Nick and CloudPay to use a salary. If it went to a credit card, it kind of gets posted against your credit limit. So if you owed $1,000, now you only owe 500. That's great. I don't think it's Visa's pushed real time on credit card for that reason, but it'll work. And there's certain use cases I mentioned, like loyalty rewards. I think we also find VAT refund as well, Justin, as well, is coming in there. Kind of those are kind of ones that's a shopping and it's related to the shopping experience. So it'll work to credit cards, but not real time.
I'll give you an example of credit card, how it works. So if you link the Earn Wages app to having the ability for the employee to manage their funds better, if their credit card statement is due on the 20th, but they don't get paid to the 26th, from the app, they can pay their credit card through the Visa Direct Pay to Card. It doesn't cost us any more money to do a credit card payment or a debit card payment. So we've had employees who've picked up on this and saying they can manage their money better. They don't need to go to payday lending or anything else because they can schedule. Our app allows them to schedule payments and choose the method they want to pay. So they could draw their full salary to their debit card and make other payments to their credit card when they become due.
That's awesome. And you just reminded me as well, because we talked about expense reimbursement. So like if I'm working for somewhere and I've paid for an expense on my credit card, I don't want to get it into my debit accounts. Like exactly. I'm very funny with my money, right? So and I guess it allows that.
I can schedule it for when, the last possible date I need to make that payment. So I don't get charged for it. So I'm managing my money better.
That's awesome. That was good. Thank you for that, Nick. I'm just going to say to anyone who wants to ask questions, there's 5 minutes left. So even if it's not on topic and there's just something you wanted to raise, do it. And if we can't cover it, we'll cover it after. But there is another question, which was a follow-up from Athena on. So for C2B transactions, so customer to business, can Visa Direct be used for that? So such as when merchants accept Venmo wallet, and does the recipient have to be a non-merchant account? So the way I read this, Justin, is can Visa Direct be used to push funds to merchants?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I would say yes and no. I mean, traditionally, when we have like a consumer pushing funds to a business, it's usually for the purchase of goods and services, and those would obviously be a traditional purchase transaction that would not be sort of a Visa Direct transaction. However, there's a little bit of a new set of use cases that are developing around digital wallets, and certain trading platforms as well, in certain markets where it's not really pulling funds for the purpose of purchasing goods and services, like you mentioned, the Venmo sort of load or wallet top up. And for those, actually, yes, we do have a transaction that flows over the Visa Direct rails that partners like Checkout can enable to do wallet loads. And that's certainly a large area of growth that we're seeing.
So you're talk me through that one again, Justin. What do you mean by wallet load? So this is
to load the Venmo account, for example. If you're holding funds in the Venmo account and you want to facilitate a P2P transaction, Visa Direct actually facilitates both legs of that transaction, the pull into the wallet and then the push to the other person.
And that's pushing to their card, though, not to their Venmo wallet.
Correct. Sorry, it's a good clarification. If you want to push that out to a card, or the wallet to wallet, and then someone pulls the money into their bank account from that wallet.
But I mean, but like come back to the question, it's not designed really to kind of replace card transactions for the merchant. It's very difficult. I think there's some small pilot programs in Asia, but it's almost like the business had their own debit card, and then the consumers would have to push it to it. But you need a third party provider. It wouldn't even be Checkout. It would need a program wallet to do it. So that scenario in theory could exist, but it doesn't really work. I think by default though, so we have with Venmo and some of the P2P programs which are running on Visa Direct rails, there are kind of micro businesses on there, and they when someone pushes from one to the other, as you said, it's running on Visa Direct rails, so it kind of happens, but it wasn't really the main design and how it works, because you need that kind of wallet layer in between. But I guess Visa Direct's used for cashing out. So if I've accepted money in my Venmo wallet, and I'll cash out to my bank account using Visa Direct, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the AFT transaction, which is that sort of wallet load transaction, is actually, it's a real transaction type. It's actually being used today to load the Venmo wallet in the US. So it is real. It is definitely something that we're seeing a lot of growth in, especially with the proliferation of these sort of Venmo-like digital wallets that are popping up all over the world. So absolutely.
Cool. So very, very conscious of time. I want to wrap up. And Nick, before we go, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask you, Justin, as well, a similar question. What impact, I guess, has switching on to payouts or kind of innovating the space, moving into payouts, payout to card, Visa Direct? What impact has that on the business and kind of your growth plans, going forward?
Well, as you know, the biggest growth for us is the earned wages app, how that's driving it. But as I said, we're now looking at payrolls, weekly payrolls, bi-weekly payrolls, about consolidating them down to monthly or longer, because the key is the employee can get access to their wages whenever they want. Because we're calculating the payroll, we can do it in real time. And I think that is where we see the opportunity. But we are now going to be launching a wallet and a virtual card to extend that. So once the employee has those funds, they can do more with them.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. And Justin, I mean, the journey, Visa Direct's been on a journey for years. I think in Russia and some of the CIS countries been around many years. US was like 5 years. It's now the kind of domestic, real-time solution in the US. But and Europe, though, is kind of probably a few years kind of more recent. But just to finish up, how's it scaling globally? Where do you see it going? And the future, what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the sky's the limit. I think we are seeing traction all over the world. And I mean, a little bit, a tangential answer to your question, but I mean, I think it's because right now we are seeing merchants demand the service. I mean, we are seeing form factor of card, we're seeing speed, simplicity, the ability to scale very quickly through a single connection, the change in consumer and user preferences to on demand, to when I want, to speed, to right now, that other companies in the ecosystem have been driving, especially with the digital pivot with COVID and other factors. I think that users are demanding it, consumers are demanding it, merchants are seeing the value of it in Europe, in the US, all across the world. And I think that is what's really exciting to me. And it's been so great to be on this panel and hear Nick talk about it, because that's exactly what we've been hearing in the market. And I think that's the most important driver.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Nick. It's been really, really awesome chatting to you all. Everyone who's on the call, if you want to reach out and if you have any questions, please do hit us up via email, via LinkedIn. Wishing you all the best. Take care, guys. Thanks again for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.